As Rod just said, my name is Gideon, the son of Joash, from the family of the Abizites, from the tribe of Manasseh, and the nation of Israel. There are those who would say I'm a great warrior, but that's not always true. It's true that I fought for Israel and for God and against those who were the enemies of Israel. But there was a time that I was just little more than the speck of a flea on the back of a dog from the nation of the Midianites. See, the Midianites, they had been battling and raiding our land for several years. They took what they wanted. They stole our food. They killed whoever they wanted. My one thought was that maybe one day I could cause some pain. I could inflict on them some pain to pay back for what all they'd done. They were a powerful people. They were vicious. They were so vicious that many of God's people, many of the Israelites fled to the mountains or the hills. Some even went and hid in holes in the ground. When the angel of the Lord found me, that's what I was doing. As great warrior, you see Gideon, I was hiding. I was in my father's winepress, threshing wheat, hoping that the Midianites wouldn't find me and steal what little food I had. It was there that the angel of the Lord found me. He showed up and he said, "The Lord is with you, Gideon. You've been chosen by God to deliver Israel from their enemies. God will be with you, and together you will crush the might of the Midian." Have you ever seen an angel? Have you ever seen an angel? I have never seen an angel, and I saw this guy, and I'm like, what is this? Who is he? And he spoke with such power and authority that even though I didn't know what he was or who he was, I wanted what he said to be true. I wanted it to be true. Now, I wasn't sure if it came from God or if this was just some fear talking. I said I needed a sign, and first, though, I wanted to make a sacrifice, an offering. So I asked if he'd stay there, and I ran home and got some meat from a young goat. I put it in a pot to cook. Took some flour and made some bread without yeast. And once the meat is cooked, and once I had that bread and the meat in the pot all going, I took it, went back to where it was. And I brought this food excited to give it as an offering, and he told me to put it on the rock. He told me to pour it out on this rock, and I set the food on the rock, and I looked at him, because that's not how you eat food. And he took his staff, and he touched it, and it erupted into flames. The food just erupted into flames, and when I looked up from the flames, he was gone. He vanished. It was then I knew he was the angel of the Lord. I saw the angel of the Lord face to face. I saw the angel of the Lord, and I've heard if you see the angel of the Lord face to face, you'll die. I just saw him, and then this voice spoke out of heaven, "Peace, Gideon. Peace. Do not be afraid, Gideon. You will not die." Have you ever had peace? True peace? I had not known peace for a very long time. So in that state of peace, I made an altar. I sacrificed to God. I called it Jehovah Shalom, or the God of peace. But even after all that, I was troubled. Have you ever been rude to somebody that's very important? You know, you just don't act right, and this guy startled me. I was very rude. He said, "The Lord is with you," and I nearly shouted, "Who is this God you speak of? Who is this God that our fathers taught us of? Who is this God that led us out of Israel? He's not here. He's not protecting us. He doesn't care for us. He's turned away. He's abandoned us." And I was right. I was wrong. See, I was wrong because God did still care for us. But I was right that he had turned away from us because, well, we worshiped other gods, because of our sinfulness. Because of that, God was furious. It's not that we intended to anger people. If you're married, you know you don't intend to anger her. You just do. And it's not that we intended to anger God. We just thought, if one God's good, many gods are better. And so all across the land, there are these altars and there's these idols. And there we prayed and sacrificed in the name of these other pagan gods. And the real God, the only real God, he wasn't pleased. And it wasn't just all the other Israelites. Even in my own home, my father's field, there was an altar that the villagers frequently offered sacrifice, much like this one. No, the previous one. That one. Do I have them in reverse order? Okay. That's the altar to Baal. And around the altar is this other thing. These are Asherah poles to the goddess of fertility. And God said to me, that night the Lord said to me, take the second bull from your father's herd, the one that is 7 years old. Put down your father's altar. Pull down your father's altar to Baal. Cut down the Asherah pole standing beside it. Then build an altar to the Lord your God here on the hilltop sanctuary. Laying the stones carefully. Sacrifice the bull as a burnt offering to the altar, using for fuel the wood of the Asherah pole that you cut down. God said to do that, so I did. But I did it while everyone was asleep. I didn't want everybody to know it was I who tore down the altar and cut down the Asherah poles, because I knew they'd seek to kill me. And once again, I'm good at hiding. But it did me no good. When the villagers woke the next day, they found out it was me. And so they were furious, and they came to me. They looked to find me, and they found me. They dragged me out of my hiding. You ever had someone stand up for you to save you? My father did that day. Joash, my father, shouted to the mob, and he said, why are you defending Baal? Will you argue his case? Whoever pleads his case will be put to death by morning. If Baal truly is a god, let him defend himself and destroy the one who broke down his altar. From then on, they called me Jerubbaal, which means let Baal defend himself, because I broke Baal's altar. It wasn't long after that time that the Midianites returned. Our land was ravaged. They took all our crops. They stole from our homes. They came with their allies, the Amalekites. The people of the eastern tribes, they settled in the valley of Jezreel. Those who dared to look down into that valley, they started counting their number. They were numerous. Those who tried to count them said that there were at least 120,000 soldiers, armed men in that camp. And when this happened, God came to me and said, Gideon, the time has come. Raise up my army. And so I thought, okay, God's going to do it. And I went to the city square, and I blew the trumpet, and all God's people, all the Israelite army, they came rushing. They came to the call of war. We were going to defend God's people. We were going to defend God's name. And they came in the village. I told them what God had told me, that it was time for us to throw off the Midianites, to go to war. We sent messengers out from the tribes of Asher, Naphtali, Zebulun. Within a few short days, we had an army of 32,000. 32,000 men had come to my banner. 32,000 men had come to be led into war. But how many did the Midianites have? 120,000. And we had 32. Then I said, God, we need to talk. You're going to send me into a battle with the enemies that are outnumbering me 4-1? I need a sign, God, that this is your will. prayed and I asked God, prove to me this is you. Show me this is your word. When I was younger, I noticed that whenever I entered my father's wine press in the morning, the floor would glisten with dew, much like we could see in the morning today. And at night, so I said to God, please do not be angry, but if this is your will, allow me to put a fleece from the flock on the ground. And if it is your will, make the ground all dry, but the fleece glistening with dew. So I placed that fleece on the floor and went to bed. And when I got up the next morning, my ground was dry. But that fleece was wet enough I could wring it. But I also doubt God. And I wanted to make sure. God, please don't be angry with me. But I just want to make sure this is you and not some trick. So please, let me put the fleece down. But this time make the ground wet and the fleece dry. And then I will know it is your will. So I did that. And I got up that next morning a little anxious. Wanted to make sure. And there it was. That fleece was dry. We're going to war. We are going to conquer. This is God's will. And 32,000 men against the Midianites. We have God. We can do this. They outnumber us 4-1. We can do this. God has got our back. We are ready to defeat them. And then God came to me and said, you have too many warriors. What? Are you serious? We only have 32,000. That's not too many, God. He said, if I let all you fight the Midianites, the Israelites will boast to me that they saved themselves by their own strength. Therefore, tell the people, whoever is timid or afraid may leave this mountain and go home. Well, that's not too bad. If you're scared, go home. All right? We don't want you fighting like this. So that's great. Okay? I only want those who are courageous and have the faith in God. So I said, if any of you are afraid, because these are God's people, they're not going to be afraid. If any of you are afraid, you can go home. So 22,000 of them went home, leaving me with 10,000 who were willing to fight. My heart dropped. But God made the fleece wet, and he made it dry. So if he gave me 10,000, that's more than I've ever led before. It could still be done. I might still be able to win with 10,000 because God is big. And so with this new strength of resolve and faith in God, I was ready. And then God said, Gideon, you still have too many men. Well, how many more do I need to lose? He told me to take them down to the water and watch how they drink. And the ones who drink like this, like a normal person, send them home. But the ones that lay on their ground and put their face in the water and lap like a dog, those are the ones I choose. God doesn't make sense. But the fleece was dry and the fleece was wet. So I did it. I sent all the rest home, and I found out I was left with 300 men. 300 against 120,000. I was very afraid. Wouldn't you be? Would you be scared? With only the force of 300, well, what could we do? The only possible outcome seemed to be a slaughter and death on our part. We were going to die. God knew I was scared, and so he told me. That night, God said to me, get up, go down to the Midianite camp, for I've given you victory over them. But if you are afraid to attack, and I was afraid, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. Listen to what the Midianites are saying, and you will be great. greatly encouraged. Then you'll be eager to attack. Don't you want to be greatly encouraged by God? All I had to do was listen. In the midst of my fear, I listened. So I grabbed Pyrrha, and we crept down to the outposts of the enemy camp, seeing all those tents, all those campfires, all those weapons. When we arrived, I overheard two men talking. One was talking about a dream he had. He saw a huge round loaf of barley bread roll down into the camp and crush the tent, overturning it and collapsing it. The other man said, and I swear this is what he said. He goes, "This can mean nothing else than the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, from the nation of Israel. Their God is going to deliver Midian and the entire camp into their hands." Did you hear what that guy said? He knew my name. He knew Gideon of Joash. He knew I was going to win because of God. Because of the God I represented. The only way he could have known such a thing is if God told him. And in my fear, God said, "Go listen to my encouragement. Go listen to my victory." It was then I knew that God would grant me the victory over our enemies. And I bowed my head and I worshiped right then. In the midst of all the enemies, I worshiped because he is real. So Pyrrha and I, afterwards, quickly and quietly, we made our way up. We got back to our 300. We said, "Get up! God has delivered them. Midian is in our hands." We divided our men into 3 companies and gave them 3 weapons: a trumpet, an empty jar, and a torch. Those aren't typical weapons. This is not how you would think God is going to win. But God is doing this, not us. So I explained to them where they were going to be in their positions around the camp. And when they were all properly positioned, and I blew my horn, the army broke their jars, throwing them on the ground. They revealed their torches, and they all started blowing their trumpets. The night around that valley was lit up with torches of faith, not of fire. And the camp below heard the trumpets, heard the crashing, and saw the lights. And then, in one, they shouted, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon!" The whole army of God raised up and shouted a victory chant. It was such an overwhelming sight, such a thunderous sound, that the camp of the Midianites erupted in fear. As they ran from their tents, grabbing their weapons, they started attacking anybody who was near them. They beat themselves. They were killing themselves. They slaughtered themselves. And those who remained, 300 easily overtook. That night changed me. It was on that night that I realized all that God had been trying to teach me and to teach the people of Israel. I learned that I was being called by a God who wants total devotion. He was a God who would not tolerate any false god or any treasure to stand in between me and my devotion to him. If I was to be used by God, I need to destroy, to remove anything in my life that would pull me away, that would take my devotion. We can only worship one God. But I also learned that the God I come to serve is a powerful God. He's a God who is capable of consuming an entire offering on a rock out of nothing. A God who could protect me from the anger of my neighbors when they wanted to kill me. A God who was powerful enough to make the ground dry and the fleece wet, and the fleece dry and the ground wet. He was a God powerful enough to destroy an army of 120,000 with 300 who just shouted. That's the God I serve. A God who will stand beside me, who will protect me in times of trouble. A God who will bring strength and peace into my life. Do you have that peace? Because he's offering it to you. He gave it to me and I was hiding. Do you know the power that God can give you in your life? The courage and the strength to live in his name. Because he's ready to give it to you. If you don't, won't you choose it now? Won't you choose? Because if he can do that with 300, imagine what he can do with the people here in St. Joe. Will you make that decision? They're going to come up, they're going to sing a song, and if you want to give your life to Christ, if you want to give up and give total devotion to him, will you do that? Because he's given you more peace than you could ever know if you'll just accept it. Will you decide that today? Will you stand? And will you come?
God, just thank you.